today we are going to be doing lesson 3 from module 2, and we are dividing fractions by fractions. And the fractions are going to have the same denominator. So the first thing that I want to start with is, first of all, this is just my page. This isn't my math notebook. So you're just kind of listening to a couple of examples. You don't have to write anything down just yet. You're just listening along with me. So if I said there were 12 ducks in a pond, and I asked you how many groups of 4 ducks there were, you would tell me, a little blurry here. If I said there were 12 ducks in a pond and I asked how many groups of 4 ducks, hopefully you told me there would be 3 groups of 4 ducks. So this is talking about dividing. I had 12 ducks originally. I put them into groups of 4 ducks. So how many groups are there? 12 divided by 4 is 3. If I'm talking about ducks and ducks, we just divide them and we get 3 ducks. So what if I said, what if there were 9 balloons in a bouquet? How many groups of 3 balloons are there? Again, it's a division question. I have 9 balloons. I need groups of 3 balloons. So take the 9 and break them into 3 groups of 3 balloons. And hopefully you would say there would be 3 groups of balloons. These are our units that we're dealing with. They're the items that we're dealing with. So here we had ducks that we were dealing with, and here we're dealing with balloons. So when we get to fractions and I say something like, how many, that's not how you spell many, how many fourths are in 3/4? So again, I'm breaking them up. I'm looking at 3, and my unit is fourths. How many fourths would be in those 3/4? Well, there would be 3/4. So this problem is really 3/4 divided into 1/4 groups, because these are 1/4. So how many fourths are in 3/4? There would be 3 of those 1/4. So these is what we call writing it in unit form. And it kind of makes sense. Greg Tang taught me this little trick, and I was like, oh, I get it. Because if you're thinking of 12 ducks, how many 4 ducks are in 12 ducks? How many groups of 4 ducks are in 12 ducks? 3. If there's 9 balloons, how many groups of 3 balloons? 3. If there's fourths, how many fourths are in 3/4? Well, there would be 3 of them in 3/4. Our model would look like this to prove it. So we have our tape diagram. We have 3/4 right here. See those sections? So then, how many groups of 1/4 are there? Well, here's a 1/4, here's a 1/4, and here's a 1/4. So there are 3 1/4 in 3/4. So what if we had it written like this? 4/5 divided into 2/5. It's simply asking if we had to write it in unit form, we would say, how many 2/5, how many ducks, how many balloons, how many groups of 2 balloons, 2 ducks, 2 birds, 2/5 are in 4/5. Whoops. So if I asked you how many groups of 2 ducks are in a group of 4 ducks, you could easily tell me it would be 2. So in this case, how many 2/5 are in 4/5? Hopefully, again, you can tell me 2. There are 2/5 in 4/5. There are 2 groups of 2 ducks in a group of 4 ducks. So written out, 4/5 divided by 2/5. how many 2/5 are in 4/5? It's simply, well, 4 divided into 2 means there's 2 groups. With the model, it would look like this. So we have our fifths, also known as our 20%. Anytime I can get those percents and decimals in here, I'm going to try to practice those. So I have 4/5 of this. I need to know how many sets of 2/5 are in that. Well, when I divide it into groups of 2/5, here's a 2/5 and here's a 2/5. There are 2 fifths in those 4/5. So our answer would be, how many of them are there? 2. So this is called, again, writing it in unit form. So it's a lot less complicated, hopefully, if you think of these fifths as an item, like 4 ducks divided into groups of 2 ducks, 4 balloons divided into groups of 2 balloons. So these are the same unit or same items, but instead of being an animal or something, it's a name of a fraction. So let's try another one. And actually, why don't you get your dry erase materials or a sheet of notebook paper out and do these along with me. So if you need to pause to get a sheet of notebook paper out or dry erase materials, go ahead and do that, and then try these ones along with me. If I'm looking at 9/4 divided by 3/4, again, if I asked you how many, if I had 9 dogs, how many groups of 3 dogs can I make? Hopefully you said 3. If there's 9 dogs, I can make 3 groups of 3 dogs. So what if it's 9/4? How many 3/4 are in 9/4? So 9 divided by 3, that tells me that there are 3 groups of 3/4 in 9/4. Drawing a picture of that. 9/4, so it's an improper fraction, which hopefully you recognize will then mean that I have more than one whole. So I have this whole here, which is going to be fourths, and then I have another whole, which is going to be fourths. I need 9 of them, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, I need another whole. So now I have 9/4. And again, why I like us drawing these models is it helps us to, again, get that visualization. 9/4 is improper. That tells me that I have wholes. In this case, I have 2 wholes and 1/4 of another item. So I have 2 and 1/4 is the same as 9/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now my job is to divide them into groups of 3/4. Divide them into groups of 3 dogs. So 1, 2, 3, that's one group of 3/4. 1, 2, 3, that's a group of 3/4. And then I can kind of squirrel this one around. Here's another group of 3/4. So again, my answer is 3. 1, 2, 3. I have 3 groups of 3/4 in 9/4. If I were going to write it as a unit form, I would say 9/4 divided into 3/4. 9 dogs divided by 3 dogs. 9 elephants divided into groups of 3 elephants. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Let's try another one. I know you love these. Again, do this one on your paper. See if you can find the answer. So after I write it, pause, think about what your answer would be, and then come back to see if you are correct. So if I have 7/8 divided into 2/8, how many groups of 7/8 are in 2/8? And actually I don't like that one, so we're going to change it first. Let's try this one. 6/8 divided into 2/8. So how many groups of 2/8 are in 6/8? So find the answer for me and also draw the model for me. If you are back, that means you have the answer. So you hopefully thought about, well, if there's 6/8, 6 dogs divided into groups of 2 dogs, or 6 ducks divided into groups of 2 ducks, or 6/8 divided into groups of 2/8, my answer would be 3. If I was going to draw a model of 6/8, I simply have my tape diagram here, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make it smaller. So there's my 6/8. I need groups of 2/8. Wait a second. Now I see what I did. Sorry. Here's my 8s. I only have part of these 8s. I don't have the whole item. So I only have 6/8 of the whole sandwich. I'm going to give each person 2/8 of the sandwich. So how many people can I feed? Well, here's one person. Here's a second person. And here's a third person. So there's my answer of 3 again. You can also, in this picture, I hope you're picking up, 6/8 is more than half. It's almost all. And maybe you can even see there's 3/4 is the same as 6/8 because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 2 in the whole thing, but 6 pieces would only be 3 groups of those. So 6/8 is the same as 3/4. So these visuals, again, are getting into your brains and hopefully giving you more experience with these fractions. All right, so now let's go back to that original. What if we had 7/8 divided into 2/8? So this one gets a little tricky because if I have 7 dogs and I want to divide them into groups of 2, I'm not going to get a whole number for my amount. So this one to me is easier to think about it in the model, to see it in the model. So if I draw my 8s here, here's my 8s. I only have 7/8 of the items, so almost all but one piece, 7/8, almost all. And I need to divide it into groups of 8s. So then I'd have, here's a group of 2/8, here's a group of 2/8, here's a group of 2/8, and then I have one piece. So this is where it gets tricky, so stick with me. So how many groups of 2/8 can I make? Well, I made 3 full groups of 2/8, and then I have a part of another group. Now, the name of this part is what part of the group that I need do I have? So this one I have one part out of the 2 parts that I need to make a 2/8. So do you see how this section right here is half of what I need for another group, because this would be another 2/8, but I don't have 2 pieces. I only have 1 out of the 2 that I need. So the answer here would be 3 1/2. 3 1/2. I know that gets tricky. So the key here is just practice, practice, practice. So let's look at this one and do this one on your paper with me or on your dry erase boards, whichever one's more comfortable. Actually, my video is about to run out, so we will go to video 2 after this one.